Hello beautiful people, let's get started with today's look. I primed my eyes and face off camera, but for my face I used the Fenty Beauty Soft Matte Pro Filter Foundation Primer. For the eyes, we're going to be starting off with a Colored Rain Safari Rain palette, and I'm going to be picking up the shade Clay. I'm building the shade up above the crease and then also winging it out underneath the brow bone. With my Ace Beauty Flare palette, I'm going to be dipping into the shade Hazelnut. I'm focusing this in the crease and then also winging it out underneath the brow bone, and I'm also going to be bringing it down to the lash line, just closing off that area on the outer portion of the lid. With the shade Acorn, I'm going to be going in with a smaller brush and building the shade up in the crease and also winging it out. This is pretty much setting us up for our game plan of cutting the crease. And I'm just going in with my previous brush to blend out the shade we just placed down and also the previous shade Hazelnut. Using a flat brush, I'm just going in and carving out the crease right below that eyeshadow we just placed down, and I'm just looking up, like tilting my head down and looking up just to check where the eyeshadow is going to be placed, like if I look or open my eyes, like if you can see it that much or not. But I mean, it's really up to preference. Sometimes I like to cut my crease a little bit higher than where my crease naturally is, but for this look I want the defining shadow Acorn to be like right on the crease, so when I open my eyes you see that depth there. I'm just going back in with the shade Acorn now and defining the crease again and just creating that stark line between the concealer and that shade. With Hazelnut, I'm just going back in and touching up above Acorn. So this is one of those looks again where you're going to see me going back and forth between previous shades just to blend it out. So I'm using a lighter hand and placing it right above where we placed Acorn, and then going in with a fluffier brush just to blend everything out. Then in the Safari Rain palette, I'm picking up the shade Toucan. I'm going to be focusing this on the inner and outer portion of the lid, leaving a little space for another eyeshadow. Using my fingers, or the warmth of my fingers, to place it on the lid to just get as much intensity from the shade, and then going in with my brush to place it down a little bit more clean in that area. In the Flare palette, I'm picking up the shade Biscotti, going in with my finger first, and then using a brush to blend it out and to place it as neatly as possible on the lid. With the shade Matriarch from the Safari Rain palette, I'm just using this to add a little bit more depth to the crease, so I'm placing this right below Acorn, but right above where the crease is already cut. Then with the shade Cider from the Flare palette, I'm going to be placing this right above the crease, so I'm doing this to add a little bit more of a gradient to this look. I wanted to add more light and kind of get a smoother transition between those colors, so I'm just going back in with Hazelnut to add that orange tone back and just blending everything out as smoothly as possible. Moving on to the face, I'm grabbing my Juvia's Place I Am Magic foundation in the shade Tanzania, which is also 205. I'm applying this very sparingly onto the face because a little goes a long way, and I'm still getting a good idea for how this foundation spreads on my face. So I went in with a damp beauty blender, it's damp with water, and blended everything out just to see how the coverage was, and I'm adding a little bit more just to get the coverage in the areas where I felt I needed it more. For contour, I'm going in with my Fenty Beauty matchsticks in the shade Espresso. I'm still being super specific about my product placement. I know I mentioned this in previous videos, but just in case, I'm gonna say it again. I am putting the product exactly where I need it to be, and then when I go in with my beauty blender, the only thing I'm focusing on is blending out the edges. I feel like this helps with just keeping the product the most concentrated in the areas where you need it the most, instead of blending it out to an area and just losing the intensity of it. And honestly, I've been really loving how this looks. For concealer, I'm going to be using my Juvia's Place I Am Magic concealer in the shade 9, and again, just being super specific about placement. I am leaving a little bit of a gap in between my nose contour and the concealer because I don't want to just blend it into each other in a way where the product just kind of mixes weird. So I'm leaving a little bit of room just to blend out that area, and with everywhere else I'm just making sure it's exactly where I need it to be. So the only thing, like I said, I'm focusing on is blending out the edges and not so much the product into a certain spot. So I'm just going in with my beauty blender now and blending everything out. So I use a super light hand on the area where the product is most concentrated, and then I use the majority of like the strength of my hand, I don't know, to blend out the edges of the product. So I started off first with my contour, and then I did the concealer. I like to let the concealer sit on the skin for a little bit just to let it like help melt into the skin and keep it the most like potent as I blend it out. And yeah, just having as much patience, blending everything out, making sure it's looking good, looking right, sitting tight, and yeah. To blend out my nose contour, I like to go in with a smaller beauty blender so it's damp with water, and I'm just using a super light hand, making sure that I still keep that contour there, but also blend it out as much as possible so it doesn't look like a harsh line. For my brows, I'm going to be using my Crease eyebrow pomade in the shade Dark Brown. I'm starting off with using the spoolie end of my brush to comb through my brows and get a good idea for the natural shape of it. Then I'm going in with the product and using really super light brush strokes to get hair-like strokes in the beginning of my brow, and then also throughout the other portions of my brow that are a little bit more sparse. From there, I'm just going to start defining the lower portion of my brow. So again, I'm just following the natural shape of my brow. I'm not trying to do anything too exaggerated. Using the spoolie end of my brush, I'm just going to go in and brush through my brows again just to get a good idea of the top portion of my brows, and then I'm going to go back in and define them. I'm always brushing through my brow just to soften up the product because I don't want it to look too harsh. I like to kind of find this weird, somehow cohesive balance between being defined but also looking natural. Now I'm just going in with the flat portion of my brush and defining the lower and upper portion of the brow where it's a little bit more sparse. I like to do this to add a little bit more definition. And just combing through the brow with the spoolie end just to soften up that area just a little bit. Okay, back to the eyes. So I'm dipping into my Flare palette and picking up the shade Forest Pine. I'm focusing this on the outer half of the lower lash line. Dipping into the shade Atlantis, I'm going to be focusing this on the inner half of my lower lash line. And I also do want to mention that off camera I applied a black eyeliner in the waterline. And for the inner tear duct, I'm using the shade Bayberry and just packing it into that area. I'm also bringing it a little bit onto the lower lash line. With the shade Sherbert, I'm applying this very lightly on top of Bayberry. So I'm doing this just to add a green hue and get it to match the rest of the bottom portion of the lid that we got going on. For eyeliner, I'm going to be using my Crease Sharp Me Fine Point Tip Eyeliner. So this is the satin finish. They were actually sold out of the matte when I was buying these products, but I really love this eyeliner. Like, are you guys seeing how smoothly it applies? Like, I love that it just does what it's supposed to. The product comes out so smoothly. The only con I have with this product is that if your eyes are wet or damp in the inner tear duct and you apply this, it will bleed. So make sure your eyes are dry, sis. And I'm just grabbing the shade Cider from the Flare palette and using this to smooth and blend out the lower portion of my lash line. With the shade Forest Pine and Atlantis, I'm just touching up the lower lash line again, so I was able to smooth out those colors, but I felt like it was a little bit lost, so that's why I'm going back in to touch it up. And yeah, that was the moment that my eyeliner decided it wanted to bleed, so I'm just going back in, touching it up. But guys, this eyeliner is $5. Like, girl, it's $5. It's $5? It's $5. Just letting you know. Just letting you know, yo. The lashes I'm wearing are from Ace Beauty, and they're in the style Calliope. For blush, I'm going to be grabbing my Juvia's Place Saharan Blush Palette Volume 2, and I'm going to be using the shade Tau. And for highlight, I'm going in with the shade Zoba. For lips, I applied a brown lip liner off camera, and then I'm going in with my Fenty Beauty Mademoiselle lipstick in the shade Candy Venom. So I'm just applying this to the lip and blending it out, just blotting my lips together and getting a smooth blend between the lip liner and the lipstick. And to finish this look off, I'm going to be using my Alma Beauty Boss Gloss in the shade Rose. And guys, this lip gloss is like chef's kiss. Like, there's something about it. The way it feels on the lips, it just feels so comfortable and hydrating. It's smooth, and I love it, and you guys should check it out. I used a setting spray off camera, and here is the finished look. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Bless up, and until next time, sending out much peace, love, and enlightenment. Bye, guys.